Welcome back, everyone. It's a tough topic that we're diving into today. The wildfires raging through Los Angeles.
Uh,
Right now, it's just heartbreaking to see the devastation and the impact it's having.
yeah, I think what's really striking about these fires is that they're not just limited to the forests or the mountains,
Yeah.
these areas we typically associate with wildfires. They're actually impacting both urban and natural environments.
Right. Yeah, it's a sobering reminder, I think, of the power of nature
Hmm.
and how we have to learn to coexist with it. We're seeing two major fires dominating the headlines right now, the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire.
Yeah.
And both have just caused immense destruction.
And the human cost is really staggering. At least 24 lives lost and thousands of homes destroyed. It's important to remember that these aren't just statistics.
Mhm.
These are real people, families, entire communities that are dealing with just unimaginable loss right now.
It's hard to fathom the scale of it all. And, amidst all this devastation, with the firefighters working tirelessly, putting their lives on the line to try and contain these infernos, they're facing some really challenging conditions too. Strong winds, dry weather, all fueling the spread of the fires. What are some of the tactics that they're using to combat such powerful forces?
Well, you're right. The weather plays a huge role in how these fires behave. Strong winds can whip up the flames and carry those burning embers for miles, starting new fires in what can feel like a terrifying chain reaction. So containment becomes really difficult. Firefighters are using a variety of techniques, digging fire breaks, clearing vegetation to try to starve the fire of fuel, and also strategically deploying fire retardant to try to slow down the flames.
It sounds like a monumental task, especially with fires of this magnitude. I mean, facing intense heat smoke inhalation and the constant danger of the fire, changing direction unexpectedly.
Absolutely. It's a high risk, high pressure situation that demands incredible skill and bravery from these firefighters. I mean, they're truly heroes in the face of this disaster.
Their dedication is remarkable and deserves our utmost respect and gratitude. And speaking of impact, I mean, the scale of the destruction is just overwhelming. Thousands of homes lost, families displaced, entire communities just reeling from the aftermath. What are some of the long-term consequences that we might see from all of this?
Well, the economic impact alone is going to be significant. Rebuilding costs, lost businesses, disrupted livelihoods. The financial burden is going to be felt for a long time. And then there's the environmental cost to consider damaged ecosystems, air pollution, and potential long-term effects on water resources.
Yeah.
The recovery process from these fires is going to be long and complex, touching every aspect of these communities.
Yeah, it's just hard to imagine what it's like for those who have lost everything. Where do you even begin to pick up the pieces after such widespread devastation?
It's a long and arduous road to recovery. The immediate needs have to be addressed first, providing shelter, food, water, medical care to those who have been injured or displaced. And then comes the monumental task of assessing the damage, clearing the debris, and restoring that essential infrastructure, like power and communication lines.
It's a logistical nightmare. On top of the emotional trauma that everyone is going through, I imagine the psychological impact of these fires can be quite profound as well.
Oh, absolutely. The psychological scars run very deep. The trauma of losing loved ones' homes and that sense of security can have lasting effects. So, providing mental health support and counseling services is crucial in helping people cope with the grief,
Mm.
the anxiety, and the post-traumatic stress that often follow disasters like this.
It's a reminder that the impact goes far beyond just the immediate physical damage, extending to the mental and emotional well-being of the entire community. So we're going to look at some key terms that you're probably seeing in the news right now
Okay.
about this ongoing disaster.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand some of these terms to really grasp what's happening.
Yeah.
It's more than just the fires themselves. It's
Mhm.
the response, the prevention efforts, the consequences.
Right.
It touches on so many aspects of life.
Absolutely. And sometimes it feels like it's a whole other language almost,
Yeah.
if you're not familiar with it.
Uh-huh.
So first up, let's talk about wildfire itself.
Okay.
I mean, it seems obvious, but there's a specific meaning here,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
When we say wildfire,
Well, wildfire is not just any fire in the woods. It's a large destructive fire that spreads rapidly over woodland or brush.
okay,
And it's really the speed and the scale that defines a wildfire.
okay,
Think about the devastation that we're seeing right now with the Palisades fire burning across both coastal areas and the mountains.
right.
That rapid spread is a hallmark of a wildfire.
And we keep hearing reports about the firefighters working on containment.
Yeah.
What does that actually involve?
Containment is all about stopping the fire spread.
Okay,
So firefighters establish boundaries using various techniques to prevent the fire from growing larger.
Hmm.
It's a very challenging battle, especially with dry conditions and strong winds working against them.
Yeah,
Imagine trying to draw a line in the sand against a relentless tide.
I see.
That's the kind of effort we're talking about here.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's incredible the courage and determination of these firefighters.
it is.
And then, of course, evacuation is another term we're hearing a lot.
Yes.
Thankfully, a term that saves lives.
Absolutely. Evacuation is the organized removal of people from areas threatened by the fire.
Right.
It's about getting folks out of harm's way before it's too late,
Mm-hmm.
even if it means leaving their homes and belongings behind.
It must be so difficult to make that decision to evacuate,
It is.
knowing the danger that you're facing,
Right.
but also the uncertainty of what you might be leaving behind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And sometimes, unfortunately, the word arson comes up in connection with these wildfires.
Yes. Arson is the criminal act of deliberately setting fire to property.
Right.
Sadly, some wildfires are started intentionally,
Yeah.
and it's a very serious crime with devastating consequences.
Yeah.
So while not always the cause is a factor, investigators must consider when determining the origin of a fire.
That's a chilling thought,
It is.
knowing that someone could intentionally inflict this kind of destruction.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing.
So we've talked about the fire itself,
Uh-huh.
the efforts to stop it,
Right.
and getting people to safety. But what about the actual tools used to fight these infernos?
Yeah.
That's where fire retardant comes in, right?
Exactly. Fire retardant is a substance used to slow down or stop the spread of fire.
Oh.
You often see it dropped from aircraft, creating those red lines on the landscape.
Yeah.
It acts as a barrier to contain the fire and give firefighters a chance to gain control. But, it's a remarkable application of science.
Mm-hmm.
But fire retardant also raises some questions about its impact on the environment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some argue that while effective in slowing the fires, these chemicals can have some unintended consequences
Oh, wow.
for the delicate ecosystems they're meant to protect.
That's a good point. It's not a simple solution.
No.
And it really underscores the complexity of these situations.
Yeah.
We can't just think about stamping that immediate threat.
Right.
We have to consider those long-term consequences as well.
Exactly. And that's why understanding these terms, even seemingly simple ones like containment or fire retardant, it's so important. They represent a whole web of interconnected issues.
Yeah.
From firefighting tactics to environmental concerns to community safety.
So for someone trying to make sense of the news,
Yeah.
understanding these terms
Uh-huh.
helps them see that bigger picture.
Absolutely. You can decode the jargon and grasp the challenges faced by those on the front lines.
Okay.
Take evacuation, for example.
Right.
It sounds straightforward enough,
Right.
but in reality, it involves complex decisions and logistical challenges.
Oh, wow.
Authorities have to assess risks, coordinate resources, and communicate effectively with the public,
Yeah.
all while dealing with these rapidly changing conditions.
It's a huge responsibility.
It
It
is.
makes you realize how critical clear communication is during a crisis.
Oh, absolutely.
It can literally be a matter of life and death.
It can be, yeah.
And even the term arson
Yes.
highlights a crucial aspect of wildfires.
It does.
While natural causes, like lightning strikes,
Right.
are often responsible,
Hmm.
the human element can't be ignored.
It can't. Investigating arson requires a deep understanding of fire behavior,
Right.
forensic science, and even criminal psychology.
Wow.
It's a reminder that human actions, both positive and negative, play a role in these events.
Yeah, it's unsettling to think that someone would intentionally set a fire,
It is.
especially knowing the potential for that widespread devastation.
Yeah.
Do we have any insights into what might motivate someone to commit arson?
Well, the motivations behind arson are complex and varied.
Okay.
Sometimes it's driven by financial gain, like insurance fraud.
Wow.
In other cases, it could be an act of revenge or vandalism.
Right.
And sometimes, tragically, it's a symptom of mental illness.
Oh, wow.
So understanding these motivations is crucial for prevention and intervention efforts.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what kind of support systems or preventative measures
Yeah.
could help address those underlying issues
Uh-huh.
and hopefully prevent these tragedies from happening in the first place.
It's a multifaceted problem
Yeah.
that requires a multi-pronged approach involving law enforcement, mental health services, community outreach, and public education.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing that human element in these
Yes.
disasters and addressing the root causes as well as the immediate effects.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the practicalities of containment to the ethical complexities of arson.
Right, huh?
But what does this all mean for our listener
Right.
who's trying to understand these wildfires and their impact?
I think the key takeaway is this.
Okay.
Wildfires are not just isolated events. They're part of a larger story
Okay.
about our relationship with the environment, our communities,
Right.
and even ourselves.
So it's about connecting the dots,
It is.
understanding the language of these events,
Yeah,
and recognizing that we all have a role to play
we do.
in mitigating the risks and responding effectively.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that human element in these disasters and addressing the root causes as well as the immediate effects. And that starts with being informed and engaged.
So as we watch the news unfold about these fires in LA,
Yeah.
what should we be paying attention to? What are the key things to keep in mind?
I think it's crucial to look beyond the headlines
Okay.
and consider the deeper implications of these events.
Okay.
For example, when you hear about containment,
Right.
don't just think about percentages.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the strategies being used,
Sure.
the resources required,
Right.
and the potential impact on the surrounding environment.
And what about evacuation?
Yeah.
It seems like there's always a debate about when and how to issue those orders.
Evacuation decisions are very complex
Yeah.
and often made under immense pressure.
I bet.
So it's important to understand the factors that go into those decisions.
Okay.
The communication channels used to alert the public
Right.
and the resources available to support evacuees.
And tragically, when arson is involved,
Yeah,
it adds another layer of complexity to these already devastating events.
absolutely. Arson investigations require a delicate balance.
Of forensic science, criminal justice, and community sensitivity.
Right.
It's important to remember that behind every act of arson, there's a story.
Wow. Yeah.
And understanding that story
Mhm.
can be crucial for prevention and healing.
It's a stark reminder that these wildfires aren't just about flames and smoke.
Right.
They're about people, communities, and the choices that we make.
Absolutely they are, yeah.
So what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from this deep dive into the language of wildfires?
I think it's this words matter.
Okay.
Understanding the terminology surrounding these events allows us to engage in more informed conversations,
Right.
ask critical questions,
Yeah.
and advocate for effective solutions.
Okay.
It empowers us to move beyond fear and helplessness and become active participants in creating a safer future.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
It's not just about learning definitions.
Yeah.
It's about using that knowledge to make a difference.
So as we continue to follow the news about these devastating wildfires,
Yeah.
let's remember the human stories behind the headlines
Uh-huh.
and use our understanding to support those affected, advocate for change, and work towards a future where these tragedies become less frequent and less severe.
I think that's a great takeaway.
All right, well, thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.